Rogue trader, what disputation will you honor Nuncius and me with today? My dearest colleague is incredibly flattered by the attention. Please, ask your questions. He is my dearest colleague and indispensable assistant. Nuncius says that he will leave a channel for inquiries about his biography and personal qualities open for you, Rogue Trader. I find our conversation stimulating, and I will look forward to your next visit.
Greetings, Rogue Trader. I would like to report that Glato and I have finished our initial inspection of the upper decks. The list of infractions ended up being 5 pages shorter than expected. I'm beginning to worry that a servant of the Lex might have little to occupy himself with aboard your ship. I've never been a part of a Rogue Trader's escort before. That said, I adapt to change more quickly than you might think. And as long as Glato is with me, I can handle any transition. I doubt such a word could ever be accurately used to describe an arbitrator, but there is some truth to your observation. Since we're not in combat, I permit myself to stand at ease, which is to say, I'm standing by on full alert. A rogue trader and an arbitrator. You have an interesting notion of normality. Well, I'll try not to disappoint you with my conversation skills. We are servants of the God Emperor's law, made manifest in the Lex Imperialis. The Adeptus Arbates uphold order on the scale of the Imperium and bring merciless punishment to offenders. The most significant ones. Beyond the expanse, the Arbates not only enforce tithe collection, but also ensure that every planet obeys his law and that the Imperium's authority remains unchallenged. Corrupt governors, crime syndicates, rebels. Not a minute goes by without some parasite trying to take a bite out of the Imperium. We destroy any who dare trespass against the law. Those are indeed the greatest threat to the Imperium, and I never leave a heretic I meet without a bullet lodged inside him. But such matters are primarily handled by other forces, which are influential enough so as not to be mentioned out loud without a reason. Unless said man's innocence has been previously established, such as during an investigation. In any other scenario, murder is just a common disturbance. My intervention is only required in the case of an attack on an administratum functionary or some other important figure. Then, I must take measures. However, if I have an assignment to carry out, I will ignore any distracting factors. The duties of the Arbates are above everyday crime. We collect the tithe that feeds the military might of the Imperium and sustains its authority over many worlds. To be bogged down in trivialities is to commit a criminal waste of time and resources that have been granted to us to serve the absolute of the law. I am at your disposal. Quite far, which comes as an unwelcome surprise to many in the Expanse. The Arbates passed the sentence and carry it out summarily. Only the highest echelons of Terra and servants of the Inquisition and rogue traders here in the Expanse can expect the privilege of a trial. Planetary governors, nobility, clergy, to an arbitrator, they are all equal before the law. To collect and guard the tithe. That does not mean we ignore other violations of the Lex Imperialis. We simply act within the scope of our limited resources, the first of which being our small numbers. Here in the Expanse, Many believed themselves to be too far from the civilized parts of the Imperium to have need of the law. The presence of the Adeptus Arbites helps to remind those people that the Lex Imperialis is in effect wherever there is at least one human being. Testing me, are you? That is fine by me. The Lex Imperialis is both the code of law and the word of the God Emperor himself. For millennia, his decrees have been amassed and preserved on Holy Terra, in the Hall of Judgment, alongside the High Lord's orders. It is at once a titanic collection of edicts and a holy text. As it should. The codes of the Lex Imperialis are my prayer, and I believe that every arbitrator's service is sacred, for it brings this imperfect reality closer to that inscribed in the Book of Judgment, closer to the God Emperor's will. It would take longer than a lifetime to read through even a fraction of his law. But there are fundamental, integral prescripts that every arbitrator knows verbatim. These are the Injuncta Cardinal, inscribed on the walls of the Arbites precinct fortresses and etched into our ammo casings. We quote them as the indisputable truth and recite them like psalms as we charge into battle. It does. Your capital world operates under the Lex Darganis, formed over many generations of the Von Valancius line. However, the Lex Imperialis is the final word in every debate. It stands above any legal directives a planet may have, for it comes from the Emperor himself. I'm listening. You prefer to have a better understanding of the people you travel with. That makes sense. Ask. Port Wanda in Calixis. The gateway to the Expanse, a monumental station, always covered in ships and bursting at the seams from all the dealers, pilgrims, mercenaries, and criminals. Compared to Port Wanda, Footfall is just a lifeless rock in the void. On Dargonis, Lady Theodora gave the top level of one of the spires over to the Arbites. A noble house used to occupy it, before it decided to stick its hand into the dynasty's coffers. By offering us such prominent lodgings, your predecessor both reinforced her ties to the Arbites and made an unambiguous gesture toward the nobility. She was a shrewd woman and unforgiving. I must admit, I was pleasantly surprised. I'd expected something far less civilized, given that the Coronis Expanse is on the outskirts of the Imperium. Instead, Dargonis may even compare to some Calixian worlds in status and stability. How? The short answer is the Schola Progenium. But I doubt you'd be satisfied with that. My father was an arbitrator, a good one, or else they wouldn't have found him in an alley filled with bullet holes. Someone who served with my father told me he was shot with 10 different weapons, and that he took at least 4 of the bastards down with him. I was sent to the Schola Progenium right after that, and the mentors there forged me into an arbitrator. I was an eager student, thanks to the example of unyielding duty and dignity my father set for me. The only thing I didn't need to borrow from him was hate. He didn't instill that. It was always with me. I never doubted that criminal vermin deserve only execution, but it was my father's death that truly crystallized my hatred, made it complete. No, I didn't want to. There was a time when I wasn't sure what to think of my father's death. Or rather, I tried not to think at all. I didn't look into the case, or for any other reason to go back to Port Wanda. Arbitrators are never assigned to their homeworlds anyway. But when I was leaving Calixis, our ship spent several days docked at the station, and so I permitted myself to go to the spot where my father was killed. I stood there for a while, and nothing. I knew that another arbitrator would have already seen the investigation through. I had nothing left to do there. It's possible. He didn't speak much. Sometimes we went days without saying a word to each other. The only time he was talkative was when he was going through his cases at night. He would inform me in terse and simple words who had sold out and why, what depravities the heretics from the lower hive levels had committed, what base motives the workers had had for hanging their foremen. All I did was listen, watch, and think. That was enough. From what my father told me, she was a principled woman of poor health. She died in childbirth. Not having known her might be the sole regret of my life. It's all true. I am a second-generation arbitrator, and my father is as dead as it gets. I wonder if being killed in action runs in the family. I guess I should hold off until I have a kid. You should ask the Marshal. I got my assignment, and that is all I know. I assume it's due to my experience. Collecting tithes from worlds bordering on savagery, and where people haven't seen a living arbitrator in 3 generations, is a task best left to a veteran. This isn't banishment. Otherwise, the same would apply to the Marshal and all other arbitrators in the Coronis Expanse. We are here because the Imperium needs its tithe, and that's all there is to it. I suppose I have what you would call a proven and diverse track record. Investigations, rebel suppressions, punitive raids, dozens of completed operations. There was this one time. I was part of a raid on a gang of mutants. I excelled in battle, received an award, and was promoted to Proctor. That is all. Very well. Have you ever been eaten alive? I have. That raid I mentioned was compromised. The enemy had been tipped off to our operation, and we had walked into a trap. Some mutants decided to chew my arm off. That was a mistake. Since I couldn't free myself, I pushed my hand down his throat, grabbed something inside, and used him as a shield. While the thing was gnawing on my bones and spraying me with ichor and my own blood, I opened fire on the rest of the scum. That little maneuver bought my unit a few critical seconds. Fortune has little to do with it. You have formed an alliance with the Arbites, just as your predecessor did. My presence here is only the expected result of your decisions. I'm listening. You hear that, Glato? The rogue trader herself is asking about you. His serial number is GL80. Glato is easier to say in Gothic. Many give their cybermastiffs striking names like Slayer or Thunder. I'm fine with Glato. Generally, cybermastiffs have all aspects of their animal nature removed, but Glato is a special case. His submodel takes a dog's loyalty and instincts as a hunter and guard, and renders them absolute. He is neither a dog nor a servitor. He is something much more. A cybermastiff, a living weapon in service of the law. He mostly provides combat support. He is trained in both lethal and non-lethal ways of disabling a target, with the ability to analyze a situation and then decide on a course of action. Glato is a good tracker too, and he can spot basic evidence. He also knows over 100 commands. In general, he is more resourceful and diligent than most people I've met. Glato, ready! The frame is mostly metal, with armored plates covering the vital segments. The jaw is reinforced. Crunching a leg off is like tearing a hair out for him. I don't even know a tenth of all the things Glato is fitted with, but it's an impressive list to be sure. Take the sensors in his nose for one. A cybermastiff is like an odor analysis laboratory. Alright, that's that. Glato, attention. They range from kill and guard and the like, to more complex guard and patrol protocols. A protocol is a combination of behavioral patterns, which the cybermastiff follows according to the present situation. In other words, I don't have to control Glato all the time. He can adjust and react to the circumstances on his own. That is a useless command, Rogue Trader. A cybermastiff must always be in an advantageous position to attack the enemy. Glato can crawl or move stealthily if the situation calls for it, but regardless, he will not respond to someone else's order. As you wish. Glato is not a pet. He is an instrument of justice, as am I. Impossible. You found me out? Yes, I am 1/100% less indifferent than I let on. Correct. Both his training and his augmetics ensure that Glato only accepts orders from me or from my superior officers. Apart from having the obvious benefits, it also serves to prevent disarray on missions involving multiple cybermastiff handlers. Glato is not a house pet, Rogue Trader. Trying to feed him will get you nowhere. He only eats out of my hands, and only at specific times. Strict training. It protects the cybermastiff against deliberate poisoning and other ill intents. Basically, don't waste your time or your meat. I must remind you that Glato is a living weapon. If you like the number of fingers you have, do not touch the dog. No? If I had a throne for every time I turned down a plea, I would have enough to buy your flagship. For your own preservation, drop this idea of yours. I am sure a rogue trader can afford the best implants. Glato, couldn't you honor the rogue trader with a lighter bite? Well, you shouldn't blame him. That was a standard warning ode, and pretty clean too. You will only need a dozen stitches. Did you hear that, Glato? It's not often you receive praise from a rogue trader. Speak! Let's say Glato has expressed his respect and apologized. Sometimes I let him play with heretics' corpses. That was a joke. If you're asking about entertainment, that concept does not really apply to an RBT's dog. But I like to imagine that Glato is enthusiastic about training with me, that he enjoys running long distances at my side, and during target practice, he always seems eager to hear me give the attack order. Fine, let me satisfy your curiosity. I do have a special exercise that helps to sharpen Glato's hunting instincts. I take a few ammo casings and hide them in hard-to-reach places. One time, after a raid on a manufactorum, I gave him a whole abandoned workshop to run around in, but I also played a trick on him by throwing one casing onto a ceiling beam. Then it was Glato's turn to play tricks. He waited under the beam until I walked up to him. Then he jumped onto my shoulders and climbed to the top. He cut my temple open with his claw and almost broke my clavicle, but he got the casing. The equipment needs to be sturdy. Glato is unstoppable when he's not holding back. Thank you. You know where to find me, Rogue Trader.
Lord Captain, your presence is welcome. And I wish to apologize for my prior coldness. After our first meeting, I was concerned that he would turn out to be another faithless offshoot of the von Valancius dynasty, like the traitor Conrad. But now I see before me a worthy leader and servant of the Imperium. I am glad to accompany you in your endeavors. If such is the rogue trader's wish, although there isn't much I can tell, I am the Emperor's daughter and his servant. What else is there to know? Now that I can tell you. I come from everywhere and nowhere. I am the child of officers of the Imperial Guard. I was born in the hold of a warship, grew up following my parents' deployments from one planet to another, and lost my family in the flames of a righteous war. My memory is like wafts of smoke over a still battlefield. The gray of a ship's plating, the strict cadence of life in military camps. My mother's uniform. I loved looking at it. Then, that battle, the rumbling, the shouting, and the soot, the screams of soldiers burning alive, and the gold of the regiment's Aquila, untouched by soot or blood, the last unsullied piece of a world that was going mad. That was my last memory of my mother, and of my former life, before the Sculoprogenium and the novitiate, before my trials, before the vows. My own relic. It's the regiment's Aquila, or rather, the fragment that survived the attack, the explosions, and the fire. For me, it's a reminder that purity and radiance can be preserved, even in the heart of darkness. Become. It's such a strange word for it. It seems right, but is that how one talks about their destiny? If you're asking about the path itself, that's easy enough to answer. First, like many other orphans, I endured the Sculoprogenium. Those years were rough, but I remember the hardship fondly. Few things can compare with the feeling of satisfaction from a past trial, even if it leaves your body aching from exhaustion, or your soul wincing in pain. I was one of the best among my peers, and I was selected for the novitiate in the ranks of the Adeptus Sororitas. When the hour came, I passed the trials and took my vows. The most joyous day of my life. The Emperor's light has always been with me, but to accept it with all your heart, to utter the oaths. That is a rapture like no other. Have I ever... But that would be shameful weakness, almost heresy. Of course not. I was born for this. I live by the Emperor's will, and in his light, I myself am the light. I must be the light. For myself, and for those who ask for my protection. I was chosen to serve. But beyond that, I won't deny it. Few things elate me as much as the thought that the heretic felled by my shot will never again orphan a child. It is my pleasure to be candid. Of course, my mission is all I can think about. To find the way to the planet called Salus Prime. Saint Argenta is my patroness, and that is where her fallen ship is. And it must also be the resting place of her great relic, the One Star. If I only knew. Neither the hagiography nor the legends give a straight answer. Classical iconographers believed that the star turned into a banner woven from silver thread, which, when brought onto the battlefield, would shed light that blinded only heretics, but did no harm to the faithful. Most of them portrayed Saint Argenta as a girl carrying this banner. Others think that upon falling from the sky, the One Star became a holy chainsword, which Argenta later used to strike down monsters and enemies of the Imperium. In some of the earlier engravings, Argenta is depicted wearing power armor with a silver star on her chest. One theological theory suggests that this armor was, in fact, the relic. Some even think that the One Star is actually the ship on which Argenta traveled. I feel that my undertaking will be fulfilled when I find the answer that has eluded the Ecclesiarchy for millennia. I pray we find the way to Salus Prime soon. The ruinous powers must be aligned against us. They stand in the way of faith. Gladly. Listen. Long ago, there was a blessed world. Thousands of stars covered the sky there, so bright that its denizens hardly knew the darkness of night. Thousands of rivers nurtured the soil. Thousands of gardens bloomed every spring, and at every moment, thousands of prayers were flying into the clear air, thanking and praising the Emperor. But one day, the people learned the meaning of darkness. Like a storm, accursed heretics who had sold themselves to the archenemy descended upon the planet. Shells flew from the sky that desolated whole cities and burned the gardens and filled the riverbeds with the blood of the faithful. Smoke and soot swallowed the skies and the 1,000 stars that had once shone over the world. Among the handful of survivors was one orphan who had watched all her family die, and the garden she'd grown up in burned to ash. But in her heart, she knew the absolute truth. Just these 3 words. The Emperor protects. And knowing that, she never looked away from the black, terrifying, smoke-covered sky. There were no more bright stars to be seen, except for one. The One Star. The bright star. The silver star shone in the sky. And when the orphan smiled at it, the One Star fell right into her hands. All the faithful in every corner of the continent who saw the trail of the falling star recognized it as an omen and went looking for the place where it landed. And they rallied together, and with the light of the One Star, they found their salvation. Yes, that was the beginning of her hagiography. It is known that she lived on a world where heretics staged a terrible insurrection. They wiped out all life on the planet, except those whom Saint Argenta managed to save with the one star, and with the strength of her faith. After that, she traveled between worlds gripped by turmoil on her ship, marked with a silver star, and brought hope to the faithful. Numerous accounts confirm this. Her coming helped people turn the tide of the war and wipe away corruption before the Imperium's main forces even arrived. Millions of people owed their lives to her, but the heretics, having realized their imminent defeat, sent the remnants of their forces after the ship with the Silver Star. It fell from the skies onto an obscure world. There are no definitive records of how old Argenta was at the time. In some chronicles, she's even called the Child Saint, but their credibility is questionable. Either way, she didn't live long, but she left a bright trail in her wake, like a falling star. One day we will reach Salis Prime and stand before the gates of Saint Argenta's ship. I know it. I believe.
You have my complete attention.
Lord Captain. Lord Captain.
volley! Another salvo!
The Emperor commands.
Of the road, trader!
Act.
Unleash our vengeful salvo!
A commendable victory, rogue trader. Thy power.
This one's going down.
The throne protects the faithful.
Set the course! Macro cannon, volley!
Duty and diligence always prevail.
Deliver me victory! Bleed them! Torpedoes launched! Darkness reached us! Unleash our vengeful salvo!
I have made inquiries into your background, Genitor, and the records are remarkably patchy. In particular, the 50 years preceding your appearance in Furibundus seem to have been assiduously scrubbed out. Who are you really, Phoebus?
Not knowing something is an unfamiliar experience for you, I see, Master Van Calox. But there is nothing reprehensible about ignorance, for knowledge always begins with a question cast out into the unknown. I will not supply any information that you do not already possess. So perhaps you should look elsewhere for answers.
I won't tolerate weakness.
That was a problem for you.
Nuncius solved this conundrum.
You'll suffer exquisitely.
Glato, we're undertaking this task. The guilty will fall. It won't take long.
Nothing I can't do. Not a problem for me. Suits my purposes. little too easy.
You I will tear your heart out for this.
Suits my purposes. Nothing I can't do. Nothing of value has been lost.
Do my bidding. Let's see to it. I need a foothold.
A work for a fleshcrafter.
Activating calculated fury algorithm. Request approved.
Brace yourself, Avalon! It will be done. Victory is imminent. Tried and tested tactics are the best ones.
Let me educate you on the art of pain.
It will be done. I've seen worse battles than this in my time.
High momentum.
A curious, unpleasant experience. What a pleasure. Lucius, I'm relying on you. I cannot comply. Executing command. A valid argument. Lucius is skeptical about this. It's in blood. Removing restrictions on the galvanic cell.
My place is at the fore. An exemplary strike. What's your target? At your beck and call. It will be done. Follow my lead. An exemplary strike. Target well.
my fury.
Indeed, an exemplary strike. Reduced to dust.
I refuse.
Victory is imminent.
Computation failed. The omniscient knows all, comprehends all. The scriptural promise is favorable.
Woe to you.
My vow is preserved. Request approved.
I refuse to comprehend this.
High momentum.
Mark the target. One of us would be enough.
The order is contrary to dogmatic protocols. My competences are not that universal.
Hold the formation.
I'll tear your heart out for this.
Target eliminated.
This can't be over.
We were trained to act as one.
The machine god was benevolent to me.
Not a problem for a proctor.
It's about time.
The machine god grants the insight.
the dynasty! Torpedoes locked.
Only our faith protects that part of the vessel now.
Leave their hulls strewn across the stars. Annihilate them! Another salvo! Fire the lance batteries! Lay in the course! Unleash your vengeful salvo! Macro cannons fully! The time has come! Leave their hulls strewn across the stars! Macro cannons fully! Onward! Bleed them! Fire right now! Torpedoes locked. Set the course. Onward! I'll mention this triumph in my memoirs.